Tonight at 10, with exactly 2 weeks to go until the general election, the leaders of the four main parties face tough questions from an audience of voters. The Prime Minister was asked about allegations that bets have been placed on the timing of the general election.
I was incredibly angry to learn of these allegations. It's a really serious matter.
We'll be getting the very latest reaction from our political editor, Chris Mason. Also tonight,
I've been watching you, and you watching me.
the legendary Hollywood actor Donald Sutherland, star of the Hunger Games films and MASH, has died at the age of 88.
Ball given back to them, though.
Denmark hold England to a disappointing draw in the Euros. And thousands gather at Stonehenge on the longest day of the year to celebrate the summer solstice.
And in half an hour, BBC London's investigation reveals how Taylor Swift fans heading to her Wembley Stadium concerts this weekend could be targeted by scammers.
Good evening. The Prime Minister says he was incredibly angry when he found out about allegations over betting on the date of the general election. Rishi Sunak called it a really serious matter and said that anyone who is found to have broken the rules should face the full force of the law and would be booted out of the Conservative Party. It comes after it emerged that the Conservative Party's director of campaigning and his wife, a Tory candidate, are being looked into by the Gambling Commission. The Prime Minister was speaking as the leaders of the four main parties faced an evening of tough questions from voters during a live question time grilling in York. Our political editor, Chris Mason, is there for us now. Chris.
Yes, hello. Evening to you, Sophie, from Yorkshire. This is the first Question Time Leaders special here on BBC One. There is another one on BBC One Wales on Monday evening featuring Plaid Cymru, and a third one a week tomorrow, which will feature Reform UK and the Green Party of England and Wales. But what about tonight? A platter of topics in the last couple of hours. The NHS, immigration, trust in leaders and tuition fees, university tuition fees in England. But for the Prime Minister, in the last half hour, questions too about the alleged conduct of some of his Conservative colleagues. Familiar music, but no panel tonight. One leader, one after another, facing a live audience for half an hour each. And first, the Prime Minister, asked about the story we've brought you on BBC News throughout the day.
Aren't these emerging allegations about betting on the election date the absolute epitome of the lack of ethics that we have had to tolerate from the Conservative Party for years and years?
Well, like you, I was incredibly angry to learn of these allegations. It's a really serious matter. It's right that they're being investigated properly by the relevant law enforcement authority.
But you're happy not to suspend them, to let them carry on and go on to the election. Obviously, they've not admitted anything. No one is saying that a decision has been taken about their guilt or their innocence. But you're happy for them to go into the election and represent you and the Conservative Party.
Well, Fiona, as you said, these investigations are ongoing. But what I can tell you is if anyone is found to have broken the rules, not only should they face the full consequences of the law, I will make sure that they are booted out of the Conservative Party.
And then his idea for young people.
National service will be compulsory. The military option will be something that people choose to do.
Oh, I see. So how will you make people do it?
Well, you'll have a set of sanctions and incentives. There's all sorts of things that people do across Europe, whether that's looking at driving licences, other access to finance, all sorts of other things. The right thing to do is to allow...
Access to finance?
Yes.
So if people don't want to do national service, what, you're going to take their bank cards away? What do you mean?
There's access. there's lots of different models around Europe.
Next, the man who polls suggest is likely to be Prime Minister 2 weeks tomorrow, and a sticky wicket over a remark he made 5 years ago about Jeremy Corbyn.
You said he'd make a great Prime Minister. Did you mean it?
It wasn't a question that really arose because I didn't think we were going to win the election. And now
But we all heard you. We all heard you saying he would be a great Prime Minister. That was your way of telling the people here, vote for him. Did you not mean that?
I was campaigning for the Labour Party. And I'm glad I did.
But you also campaigned for Jeremy Corbyn to be Prime Minister.
Campaigning for the Labour Party. I was a Labour politician.
Let's hear the question.
The audience laughed at his repeated refusal to give a yes or no answer. Susan came next.
Given your severe criticism of the Conservatives on the topic of immigration, do you think it's acceptable at this point, so near the general election, for your own party not to commit to specific targets around this critical topic?
I'm not going to put an arbitrary figure on it, because every single politician who's put a number on it has never met that number.
Next, Scotland's First Minister and Scottish National Party leader John Swinney. It's been a bumpy time for the SNP, not least the arrest of former leader Nicola Sturgeon and the arrest and charging of her husband Peter Murrell, the SNP's former chief executive, over the party's finances.
Given the recent scandals and dramas with the SNP, how will you differ from your predecessors and project competence?
I think the honest answer is that we've had a very tough time as a party in the last couple of years, and as a consequence of all of those difficulties, I'm here to lead the Scottish National Party.
The SNP say if they win a majority of Scottish seats next month, that would mean negotiations for a second independence referendum should begin. So,
if you do not get the majority of Scottish seats at Westminster, what does that tell you about your mandate to ask for another referendum?
Well, what I want to do during the election campaign is to encourage people to vote for the SNP.
Okay, so you're not answering that question.
To enable us to deliver on that policy commitment, which is right at the heart of our manifesto.
Are you going to answer that question or not?
Well, what I'm saying is that I want people to vote for the SNP.
Next up, the Liberal Democrat leader, Sir Ed Davey, and Alison in the audience wasn't messing about.
Aren't you going to bankrupt the country?
Well, thank you for your question, Alison. The answer is no, and I think our proposals are responsible, they're fully costed. I think other parties, frankly, are not putting the money in we need to rescue our public services.
The Liberal Democrats' record in coalition government still riles some. Take this about university tuition fees in England.
How can my generation trust you?
Well, listen, I understand why your generation lost faith in us. It was a difficult government to be in, and we got punished.
But politics isn't all policies, costings and accountability.
You know, my wife, I met her on a Liberal Democrat housing policy working group.
God, that sounds...
maybe
what a night out that sounds,
Mr. Romance.
Well, the latest there from York. Let's talk to Chris Mason, who is joining us now. And we saw in your report this row over the allegations of bets on the timing of the general election. It is really overshadowing the Conservatives' campaign at the moment.
It certainly has done today, and let me bring you the latest on that story now, because we have a statement tonight from the Conservative candidate Laura Saunders. She has said via her solicitors that she will be cooperating with the Gambling Commission, that's the regulator for the betting industry, and she said she is considering legal action against the BBC and any other publishers who infringe her privacy rights. Here is our story. If you bet on Labour, you can never win. So said this Conservative Party social media video yesterday afternoon, complete with jaunty music. The video has since vanished.
Hi, my name's Laura Saunders and I'm the Conservative Party candidate for Bristol North West.
She has been doing the campaigning thing all over her patch. This is one of her Facebook videos. She's also worked for the Conservative Party since 2015, including at head office in Westminster. And here is her husband, Tony Lee. He is the Conservative Party's Director of Campaigning. He took leave of absence from the job yesterday.
I can tell how the world will think it looks, which is not great, but, you know, I can't get into, I can't know what conversations were had with whom at what time.
I later found out both Laura Saunders and Tony Lee are being looked into by the Gambling Commission, the regulator, over alleged bets about the timing of the general election. We have approached Mr. Lee and he has not commented. A Conservative Party spokesman told the BBC, "We have been contacted by the Gambling Commission about a small number of individuals. As the Gambling Commission is an independent body, it wouldn't be proper to comment further until any process is concluded."
Did you have inside information?
The party said something similar last week when Rishi Sunak's parliamentary aide and Conservative candidate Craig Williams admitted to betting on the timing of the election.
When you made the bet, a huge error of judgment, that's for sure, and I apologise.
The Gambling Commission has told us currently the Commission is investigating the possibility of offences concerning the date of the election. This is an ongoing investigation. We are not confirming or denying the identity of any individuals involved in this investigation. For Conservative campaign headquarters, a fortnight from polling day and miles behind in the opinion polls, this, to put it delicately, is the last thing they need. Chris Mason, BBC News.
Well, there is more on the gambling row on Newsnight tonight. Here's Kirsty Walk.
Yes, do turn on to Newsnight, where we'll be interrogating the Tory candidate's betting scandal and reviewing Rishi Sunak's response to it on the Big Question Time debate tonight.
Thank you. The rest of the news now, and the legendary Hollywood actor Donald Sutherland has died at the age of 88. In a career which spans 6 decades, he became one of the most recognisable and most respected actors in Hollywood. His son, the actor Kiefer Sutherland, announced his death, calling him one of the most important actors in the history of film. David Silito looks back at his career.
Tonight's movie has been MASH.
In 1970, a sprawling, darkly comic film about the Korean War came out.
I'm Dr. Jekyll, actually. This is my friend, Mr. Hyde.
The hero, a cynical, rebellious, heavy-drinking, womanizing surgeon.
Everybody was telling me, don't do it. The end of it, it'll ruin you. We did it in 5 weeks, and it was wonderful.
Born in Canada,
Where's his sign?
he'd studied engineering before switching to acting and working in theatre in Britain.
4 captains bear Hamlet like a soldier to the stage.
MASH,
Heard from your wife?
a thinly veiled satire of Vietnam, led to Klute
Would you mind not doing that?
with Jane Fonda. It was the first of 3 films together and an off-screen relationship. At a moment when a dark and maverick mood was making itself felt in Hollywood, Donald Sutherland, with that piercing gaze, was just the sort of complex leading man it was looking for. Take Don't Look Now. A disturbing, ghostly story about grief. That brief golden era in the 70s soon passed.
Closer than you think.
But Donald Sutherland was never out of work.
Everything I'm going to tell you is classified top secret.
JFK was almost a throwback to the 70s paranoid conspiracy thriller.
Why was Kennedy killed?
And more recently, there was The Hunger Games, a film that he hoped might inspire a little rebellion.
I've been watching you.
In today's youth.
And you watching me.
Yet, despite it all, there was no Best Actor Oscar on his mantelpiece. However, that wasn't, he said, what drove him.
It's a love affair, you know. I've made films for Fellini and for Bertolucci, for Chabrol, for Werner Herzog, for Rebecca Horn. These people I love. And that love is the greatest award you could ever have in your life.
And leading the tributes to Donald Sutherland, his son Kiefer. His father, he said, loved what he did and did what he loved. And one can never ask for more than that. A life well lived.
The actor Donald Sutherland, who has died at the age of 88. England have been held to a disappointing draw in their second group stage match against Denmark at the Euros this afternoon. If England had won, they would have been guaranteed a place in the knockout stages. But the 1-1 draw means they still remain top of the group and in a strong position to qualify for the last 16. From Germany, here's Andy Swiss.
Hoping to make a splash. England fans soaking up the atmosphere in Frankfurt as thousands descended on the city's main square before heading for the stadium, and they hoped another victory. God Save the King, sung by the watching Prince of Wales. Could England keep their cool? Well, Danes began to dominate and England began to toil. After a lethargic draw, but just listen to those boos. A chorus of disapproval on a grim night for England's players and their manager.
Clearly not what we would have hoped. There's a huge amount of work. That's evident from the two performances that we've given, but we have to stay tight. We understand that people will be disappointed with the performances, and rightly so, and we've got to make them better.
But faith in England's team and tactics is being sorely tested.
I think we got the talent. I don't think we got the manager.
We have the best attacking players possibly in the whole tournament, and we're not using them well. We're playing too defensive.
No initiative, no trying to get on the front foot, just very boring football.
England are still top of their group, but after this, that may seem about the only positive. Yes, the one consolation for England is that a draw against Slovenia on Tuesday will guarantee them a place in the knockout stage. But make no mistake, that was a pretty flat performance, and those boos at the final whistle will not have made for easy listening. England, remember, are one of the tournament favourites here, but on this showing, you wouldn't think so, Sophie.
Andy Swiss, thank you. The Bank of England has held interest rates at 5.25%, their highest level in 16 years, meaning good news for savers and bad news for borrowers. But there are suggestions there could be a cut in rates in the coming months, as our economics editor Faisal Islam explains.
OK, so it's 4 bedrooms.
Higher mortgage rates, higher interest rates have hit first-time buyers like James in Coventry especially, with many having to stretch their terms long into the future.
We've had to save for effectively another year. It's also understanding, the term of the mortgage, you know, from looking at it, is now 30 years long, which is going to put me into a retirement age.
Those mortgage rates have kept on going up this year. For 2-year fixes, they actually reached an average of just below 6% in recent days. That's partly because the Bank of England has been holding off cutting base interest rates this year. Today it again voted against a cut by 7-2, holding it at a 16-year high. The decision to hold today was a close-run thing, far closer than a 7-2 vote against a cut sounds. That's because there's a critical group now in the middle who thinks the argument's already finally balanced, who are playing down the idea that services inflation is too high and seems to be preparing the ground for a rate cut on the 1st of August. Major mortgage lenders say it has been volatile.
You know, in the past 3 years, there's been all these crises in terms of people's cost of living, 15 years of rate rises in 15 months. You might have expected to see a bigger impact on the housing market.
For some people, it has been very difficult. And if you're coming off a fixed rate at just the wrong time, then some people have had very significant upticks in their repayments. What we're seeing, though, is that that's not necessarily flowing through into arrears. And while arrears are starting to tick up across the industry, they are still significantly below the peaks we would have seen post the global financial crisis.
But savers get to enjoy these higher rates at least for a month more. Faisal Islam, BBC News.
A friend of the missing teenager, Jay Slater, says she fears he is in severe danger in Tenerife after he went missing 3 days ago. Police have refocused their search in the north of the island after discounting information which took them south. The 19-year-old flew to the Canary Islands with friends for a music festival. Nick Garnett reports.
They've narrowed the search to one particular valley, the focus of all attention. But there's still no sign of Jay Slater. A holiday in Tenerife is a rite of passage for so many young adults. It was no different for Jay. A first holiday without parents. Energy, his first music festival with friends. A chance to party. On Sunday night he went to where 2 friends were staying in this remote national park in the northwest of the island. When he left them, he decided to walk home. But that was a 10-hour journey. He rang his friend Lucy. She was the last person to speak to him.
It's just the unknown that's so strange. If you look around, there's just mountain after mountain after mountain. Everything looks the same. He's never been up here before. Like, it would be so easy for him to get lost.
Dressed only in a t-shirt and shorts, Jay had nothing to drink and his phone ran out of battery in the middle of the call. Since then, Lucy's been appealing for help on social media, and as a result, locals have come to join the search. But there's also been abuse and prank callers. She didn't want us to show her face. All she does want is for Jay to be found safe and well.
He's not a stupid boy. He would know that he hasn't got a phone, he hasn't got any water. He needs to stay on the road, find a tourist, find a hiker, find a photographer.
But he hasn't done that, has he? That's
No,
not happened. The phone call hasn't happened.
No, so I don't know. I don't know what's happened, and that is why we need the British police here to come and assist the Spanish authorities and make sure that they are doing everything that they can.
The Spanish rescue teams say they've got the equipment and resources to deal with the search. Specialist dog teams and drones are being used to scour the landscape, but as yet, nobody knows what's happened to the 19-year-old. Nick Garnett, BBC News, Tenerife.
The Supreme Court has issued a landmark judgment which could affect the viability of future fossil fuel projects in the UK. It ruled that when Surrey County Council gave planning permission for new oil wells near Gatwick Airport, it should have taken into account the climate impact of burning the oil extracted from them. The government has said it will consider the ruling carefully. Here's our climate editor, Justin Rolat.
For Sarah Finch, this is the culmination of years of legal battles. She hopes the decision will prove a landmark.
How does it feel to have got to this point?
Well, it feels surreal. I think I've actually discovered what it feels like to go beyond your wildest dreams. And even though I always thought that we were right in what we were arguing, I never thought that being right necessarily meant that you'd win.
The case was about the planning permission awarded in 2019 for an oil well here in the Surrey countryside. Yup, there is oil under Surrey. The Supreme Court ruled the permission was unlawful because the local authority didn't take into account the wider impacts of the oil the project would produce. Today's judgment here at the Supreme Court in London doesn't ban future fossil fuel developments in the UK. What it does do is weigh the scales more heavily against them. That's because now the authorities don't just have to take into account the impacts of extracting coal, oil and gas. Now they also have to take into account the global impacts of burning the stuff as well. The UK is still a significant producer of oil and gas. Campaigners say today's judgment could signal the end for some big new projects like the Rosebank oil and gas field off the coast of Shetland or the proposed new coalfield in Cumbria. Legal experts say that is not the case. As long as the planning authorities can show they are aware of the wider climate consequences, they could still decide the economic and other benefits outweigh those impacts. Justin Rolat, BBC News, the Supreme Court, London.
Now, all through this election campaign, as part of the BBC's Your Voice, Your Vote, we've been asking people to tell us which issues matter to them. And one that keeps coming up is social care. Our social affairs editor, Alison Holt, has been speaking to one couple about the challenges that they face.
Isolated, life on hold, and I just feel like my family are having to do for me because no one else wants to.
This is Julie Sharp. She lives in Rotherham with her husband Sam.
I actually want to hear about a solid plan that would actually work to fix social care.
Sam is Julie's main carer. She has a range of complex long-term health conditions. They also both have autism. They rely on 2 daily care visits and 4 hours respite a week funded by their council.
Hi, Sam.
They contacted us about social care.
Hi, Julie.
And its NHS version, continuing health care.
It would be great to talk to you about why you got in touch with us.
Nobody's mentioned continuing healthcare yet. Continuing healthcare is basically the same as adult social care, it's just a matter of who funds it. So in my case, the council are saying that my needs are above and beyond what a local authority can provide. Oops, that's tablet alarm.
Julie's body doesn't produce a hormone called cortisol, so she needs regular tablets. If she's unwell or falls, there's a danger she could become unconscious or even die, unless she's given an emergency injection. Last year, she needed 4.
So it is literally life and death?
Yep, it's life and death.
The council says legally its care workers can't give the injections and they are a health task. Currently, if Sam isn't with Julie, her risk assessment says a member of the public would need to be sourced.
The care worker would bring this member of public into the house to be given an information sheet or a YouTube video to follow to give me this injection.
The couple say they've been waiting 18 months to find out if they'll get NHS care. They want politicians to remove the red tape.
There's no one party out there. One's saying that they want to help the National Health Service, one's saying that they want to make a national care service. why not make them a national health and care service?
The NHS is in crisis because the care system isn't working. They actually need a solid concrete plan that actually has some credibility.
Rotherham Council and the local NHS say they work closely to support people with complex needs, but have different legal frameworks and can't comment on individual cases.
Alison is with me now. So that is the case of Julie and Sam. There are many, many people in the UK struggling with social care. What kind of solutions are the main parties coming up with?
There are a lot of people in difficult situations with care, and I would say that there is broad political agreement about the problems: underfunding, lack of staff, increasing demand. And we have to say here we're talking about the care system in England mainly. It's a devolved matter. The other nations have slightly more generous systems, but they also face similar pressures. So the two main parties, there's not a lot of detail on social care. The Conservatives say they would go ahead with an £86,000 cap or limit on care costs that one individual can rack up during their lifetime. Labour said they'd also introduce that. It's scheduled for October 2025, but I have to say, I think both parties may face questions on the cost of that, whether the money's there. Labour says it will set up a national care service within 10 years and it wants to drive up quality. The Lib Dems have had most to say on social care, putting it at the heart of their plans, promising free personal care, similar to the system that exists in Scotland.
Alison Holt, thank you. The Alliance Party of Northern Ireland, which is neither unionist nor nationalist, has launched its election manifesto in Belfast. It is pushing for reform of the devolved government, including changing how the Stormont Assembly votes on contentious issues. The party leader, Naomi Long, also called for a new funding formula to increase the amount of public money available to local ministers.
Alliance MPs are going to use any influence we have at Westminster to push for that fairer financial deal for Northern Ireland. A deal that isn't about charity, but is about being fair in accounting for what we are owed from Treasury, according to our need.
The Scottish Green Party have promised a transformative vision for the country at their election manifesto launch. They're pledging to introduce a wealth tax on the richest people in the UK, an end to oil and gas companies being able to advertise, and a stop on all subsidies for fossil fuels. 2 weeks to go until Wimbledon, and Britain's new #1, Jack Draper, has just claimed the biggest victory of his career by beating the top seed and defending Wimbledon champion Carlos Alcaraz at Queen's Club in London. It's the first time the Spanish superstar has lost a match on grass in almost 2 years. 22-year-old Jack Draper beat the world #2 in straight sets. Now, today is the summer solstice and thousands have gathered at Stonehenge to celebrate the longest day of the year. It's thought Stonehenge was built to align with the sun's movements. Duncan Kennedy is there for us now. Duncan.
Well, Sophie, a real party atmosphere building here tonight. People singing, people dancing. It's been a lively couple of days for Stonehenge, a place that's been around for 5,000 years but still able to make the news. Just yesterday, we had those two people from Just Stop Oil who threw their powdered paint onto some of the stones behind me here. English Heritage say they've got the paint off the stones. They're not sure about whether they can get it off all the 50 species of lichen on the stones. Wiltshire police say that 2 people have been released on bail. So far as these summer solstice celebrations themselves are concerned, well, they're expecting something like 20,000 people here over the next couple of hours. Just a couple of hours ago, we saw the sun set here. Beautiful sunset across the fields here. Many people coming to Stonehenge at this time, of course, to mark the whole event itself, to engage in what they think is a spiritual experience. Other people here just to see the start of summer. The actual weather for the sunrise tomorrow over the stones here, the all-important sunrise, well, that weather is looking pretty good. It all takes place at about 4:52 in the morning. English Heritage say if you haven't already come, you can watch it live on their streaming service. They say they're hoping for a peaceful and perhaps even mystical event.
Duncan Kennedy, thank you very much. I'm going to hand you straight to the weather now. Louise Lee, he was stealing all your lines there, wasn't he?
I know, Duncan. There is a job going if you want it. Good evening, everybody. As you've just heard, yes, it was a beautiful sunset, and you won't have to wait that long, actually, to see the sun rise, because obviously the longest day is going to lead to a pretty short night. Only 5 hours of darkness in Lerwick in Scotland. So get to bed, because if, like me, you can't sleep as soon as it gets sunny and all the birds start singing. And there'll be plenty of sunshine for some of us tomorrow. Not all, however. This stripe of cloud is going to spoil the party, I'm afraid, in the far north and west. It will introduce more cloud and some showery outbreaks of rain as we go through the day. But eastern Scotland, central eastern England, a beautiful afternoon in prospect, and it's going to continue to get warmer. Clouding over a little out towards the west, showery outbreaks of rain continuing to Northern Ireland and northwest Scotland. Here, not quite as warm, but we could once again see temperatures down from eastern Scotland to southeast England at around 20 to 23 degrees. Now, that weather front will have to push its way south. It's going to weaken all the time, but it does mean maybe a day of mixed fortunes first thing on Saturday. Some cloud, few scattered showers across central and southeastern England. Hopefully that clears away first thing in the morning, and eventually the story will brighten up. Maybe some showers continuing to the far northwest of Scotland, but on the whole, Saturday, again, a promising day, really. We're looking at 15 to 22 degrees. High pressure will continue to build, with a light southwesterly winds going to feed in warmer and increasingly more humid air. Lots of sunshine, lots of warmth, but that could spark off some thundery downpours really towards the end of next week. That's a long way away. Let's just enjoy the sunshine. Sophie.
We will, Louise. Thank you very much. And that's it from the BBC News at 10 right now on BBC One. It's time to join our colleagues for the news where you are. Good night.